How's it going, everyone? So I wanted to talk about why I think there needs to be more actual natural selection in weeding out bad ideas than we currently have. And part of this is just sparked from seeing a lot of stupid stuff on the internet. I mean, you could see people who do the things like the fire challenge and other types of challenges that are just really stupid ideas. Somebody gonna take oil and light it on their chest and they're like a grown adult. That's pretty dumb. So the point is that we have this type of domestication from both, the government, childhood to adult programs, that is public schooling, and the welfareism that is coerced, that is from the government. And this is to be very distinct from private means to learning, private means of charity, because there is a difference between coercion, in other words, people being forcibly having their goods and services taken from and through taxation and that being redistributed, versus those who are scrutinizing and choose whether or not they want to help somebody. And a lot of the stupidity, I think, of today, and I'm going to define stupidity very narrowly so that people aren't thinking, oh my gosh, am I stupid? Um, the stupidity of today comes largely from an inability to critically think. And when I say critically think, I mean look at oneself, look at one's goals, and have the ability to use discernment and evaluate whether or not what someone's actions are toward those goals. Um, Short-term orientation is a part of this. If you're not thinking about yourself in the long term, if you're not evaluating things and judging the source, questioning the source, doing your own research, those kinds of things. If you're not someone who strives to be better. I mean, for me, I have a whole nother level, which is I feel like I want to succeed as badly as I want to breathe. You don't have to be that driven to still be a critical thinker and to be a careful thinker, someone who questions and evaluates everything that comes to them. It doesn't mean, of course, every time you sit in a chair, you critically question whether or not the engineer who built the chair did the appropriate amount of physics analysis to make sure it would hold your weight. I'm not saying that you're doing that constant thing for every single little thing in your life. I'm saying when it comes to big decisions, when it comes to how you live your life, your day-to-day, how you take care of your body, how you take care of your learning, how you take care of the things you do to earn money or to establish a shelter for yourself, all these things, the critical thinking, um, when that gets tainted and it becomes reliant upon authority, and when it becomes reliant upon automatic reasoning, oh, this is a celebrity who likes this, therefore I like it, this is what my mom told me, therefore it's true, this is what, some sort of unevaluated reasoning. If you're not using critical thinking, if you're just going with something, if you're just going with something with a small induction sample. Induction just means you're taking little examples and you're trying to bring out a big principle, right? Let's just say you went to, a restaurant and you had food and it was chicken and, you got sick. You can't just simply say, oh, I must be allergic to chicken or I must be this or that. You have to sit there and say, okay, well, what was it? Was the food undercooked? Did the cook wash his hands before going to the bathroom? Was there something that got contaminated? Am I allergic to the sauce? That's the kind of critical reasoning process that you need for big decisions in your life, especially, and I think at this juncture, where things are confrontational or there's a hurt or something like that, where your body's hurting or where um, there's a change in your life that can come. And people don't do that. People are taught to just rely on whatever is popular. And of course, it can be very easy because it's convenient. Why do any critical thinking for yourself? Some people would rather just be back to watching TV or playing video games or something like that than to actually think, is my diet helping my body or is it making me more sick? Is what I'm doing in relation to other people with my, how I talk to them, is that actually kind toward them or is that hurtful? Am I destroying my relationships? Am I building skills that I need to make sure that I can provide for myself later in life? Am I doing, those kinds of thought processes? And this mentality is where people are becoming lackadaisical is purely a bailout system mentality. It's oh, the government's going to take care of it. If I get sick, the government's going to take care of it. If I lose my job, the government's going to take care of it. If I can't feed my kids, the government's going to take care of it. You know, if I am uncertain about something or I find something questionable, well, I should just go and seek assurance from my government elected or, mandated authority. Maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's a, politician, maybe it's, the FDA, whatever it is. Nobody is sitting there and saying, I'd really like to understand what it is that I'm doing or the choice I'm making. Of course, not everybody's going to be able to understand everything about the fundamentals of science and math and physics and all this stuff. I'm saying that, but you take the time to think about it, you take the time to test it out in your own life, you take the time to research, take the time to learn and experiment and not automatically assume something. And tying this all back into the natural selection aspect, the natural selection aspect is what we've been missing. We've been missing the natural selection out of bad ideas. When people fail because of bad ideas, or because of just sheer stupidity. And someone's lighting themselves on fire in a bathtub because they want to do a fire challenge. These things need to be stopped. They need to be ended, and not supported in any way, and not buffered in any way. And poor decision making can be as big as white collar. Government giving a subsidy or a handout or a bailout to a big company that makes terrible decisions and props up that thieving, terrible company, or a bad idea. It's moving it away from the diversity of people and consumer choices, and allowing for things to just be wasted. And of course, that can happen, of course, in the market as well. People can buy stuff, the product is bad or this or that, but the closure is much quicker. And the ability to not be forced into it is much quicker. You could go to a Chipotle or something like that. You buy something like, whoa, that's bad. I'm not going back there. Okay, well, great. Well, now it's done. You're not coerced through taxes to keep on paying to them. It's like, sorry, we have a $400 million commitment to them. You have to keep paying. So the natural selection aspect of human nature within the context of voluntary trade and openness and a lack of violence. And I say lack of violence in terms of initiation. When people respect each other, they don't go out to violate each other's bodies. They don't go out and violate other people's stuff and possessions. They don't initiate that aspect. When you start to move in that direction, of course, I'm not saying they ever be perfect, but when you start to move in that direction and people stop accepting that as a social norm, stop accepting the initiation of violence as a social norm, and stop accepting that as a social norm, and no exceptions for that can be ever allowed, including government. You can't just label it taxation and suddenly not theft. When people start moving away from that, you start to see real natural selection, not the artificial stuff with the forced violence of government. And real natural selection, you start to see bad ideas wither away. You start to see people who are making really bad decisions not be, supported in that. If you're being completely, and I'm going to say, we'll just say stupid in your health decisions. If you're like, yeah, I'm going to drink Pepsi Cola 2 liters every day, and I'm going to eat nasty, terrible food for me every day, and you're just going to, get yourself really sick, get type 2 diabetes. That's not going to be supported. You're not going to be like, oh, well, I guess that qualifies you under disability. No, there's no disability for doing that. And if you had a genuine genetic issue, there are plenty of charities that would love to help you. And there are people who have gone through those things and would love to help you. There are scientists who would love to help you. There are people, this exists, it's a reality, it's part of my studies, my undergraduate degree. This is a norm. There are people who are interested in these things and they want to help other people. And it's a part of being human, much like your heart beats. People do feel compassion and empathy. Of course, people might have less empathy than others that exist, but there are people who have self-interest. They want to see these problems solved. They want to see genetic cures happen because they have a selfish interest in it. They want to know, hey, does this actually work? Oh, great, I feel great. I feel a lot better. I'm not, either hypo or hyper, thyroid, affected. When it comes to just the poor decision aspect, though, nobody wants to support that. What private charity is, gonna want to help somebody who intentionally keeps making bad decisions? No. And that's what happens with government. It doesn't matter what your decision or your rationale is. It's just, oh yeah, here's money, here's help or whatever. There isn't a correction period for the reasoning that comes from private charity where there's a scrutinizing eye. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying all or nothing here. I just want to be clear. I'm not saying, oh yeah, there's absolutely no scrutiny within the government system. But I'm saying the scrutiny is a lot smaller, especially considering the constitutional laws as applied in terms of equal protection and equal distribution. Um, that is something that, they're not looking into the underlying reasons, and that's something that needs to change. And the fix to these problems, not that, oh yeah, well, if you're poor, or you just are not as smart as everybody else, that means that you should just die. No, not at all. What it means is that in order to improve your condition, you are going to have to work harder. The good news is that, as we've seen with all technologies, when people start to voluntarily cooperate and work with each other toward building technologies, it becomes easier for those who are at lower ends to rise up. And I love using this type of example, Khan Academy, um, other Wikipedia, like things like that, where someone who, as if they want to try, literally, that's all they need is you're willing to try. The cost to entry is so low to just watch a YouTube video for most people these days. Even the poorest, I mean, it's really hard to find someone who doesn't have access to at least a phone. But even if you didn't, public libraries or something like that, or maybe a charitable library or something like that, or watching it behind somebody outside of a store. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can have access to this type of media. Um, and just an aside, just take away from that, but obviously, I don't think that the notion of public libraries would dissipate with government. I think that there would still be charitable library type of resources, just like there are not-for-profit businesses geared toward helping people in a variety of ways. That doesn't dissipate. If there's like a public interest and people want to get together and make that happen, that's great. I mean, I saw a kid just recently was being chastised by his city for having a little mini public library in front of his house. They try to take down his little book share. And that's a freaking 8-year-old. I don't know. I don't know exactly how old he is, but he was somewhere in the preteen to younger area. I mean, the demand is there. If people want it, it's going to happen. And it's time to reward decision making that is for the betterment of somebody, the betterment of health, the betterment of mind, the betterment of decision. That doesn't mean that everybody has to like the same thing. It doesn't mean that everybody has to like the same TV shows or books or foods or stuff like that. No, that's not what it means. Diversity in choice is okay. Diversity in harm is not. Diversity in destructive behavior that is destroying one's body. And I'm not saying that people can't, of course, choose to destroy their body, but it doesn't have to be forced into support. There's a difference between, if you want to, do stuff to your own body, that's up to you, but don't expect then that there's going to be a handout or a bailout from that. And of course, again, reemphasizing, people with addictions, there's resources for that. People who have genetic issues, there's resources for that. But without a true critical eye on decision making and improving that process, you're going to have artificial selection with government that continues to enable and empower and grow a lack of critical reasoning, a lack of a good type of mental gymnastics, a type that improves a person's health and their goals. Of course, if somebody wants to be homeless as well, I mean, there could be improved goals there, technically. The shared knowledge of learning how to survive outdoors is something that can be learned as a science. But again, subsidizing those things mandatorily that are destructive and are chosen, that needs to stop. So if you have any thoughts about this or any curiosities, love to talk about it. It's just, to me, it's a pet peeve of mine when it comes to understanding what the difference is between voluntary living and what we have with government in terms of subsidizing poor choices, and that goes from as little as the welfare check all the way up to the white collar bailout. And that's not to say or to take away empathy from those who have suffered or who had a plight. Someone they get hit by a hurricane. Someone has a sudden death in the family because something that they didn't know in the body. Okay, that's understandable. And it's great because more than ever, we have things like GoFundMe, Indiegogo, Kickstarter, all these different types of self-funding things. And people are getting cancer treatments and all sorts of, amazing help just like that. Like even, I just think of my aunt, she had cancer. They did a fundraiser online, $30,000. Boom, like that. And that type of empathy is growing. People are actually able to connect with their charity. And the closer that someone, this is a separate social science thing that I'll just touch on really quick, the closer that people have an association with their charitable work, they can watch their effects, they can monitor their stuff, they can know what's going on, the more satisfaction people have out of it. When you abstract it, people just don't care. And this is a social science study um, from European nations where they're much more heavily welfareized, you could say, and people just consider charity as a part of that. They don't want to do anything else. It's just like my taxes pay for that stuff. Okay, that's it. Where in America, people feel more empathetic because it's not as ingrained. Like, oh, the government for forever like provides this baseline social safety net for everybody. It's like, no, helping out people is a part of life and empathy, and that's not a bad thing, not at all. But when it comes from a mandatory perspective, we have a lot of problems, especially with critical thinking. All right, thanks everyone for listening. It was really long, but I will talk to y'all later.